morning. I'd like to call this work session of the Southampton Town Board to order on this 27th day of September 2018. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Okay, so today at work session, it'll be fairly brief. We have no regular items, only executive session items, confidential legal advice, personnel, and also contracts. So I also remind the board that at 11 a.m. we have a special meeting of the town board. That'll be the presentation of the supervisor's 2019 tentative budget for the town. So I'd like to make a motion to end the work session and go into executive session as mentioned.
Second.
Second by Councilman Bouvier. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Good morning. I'd like to call this special town board meeting of the Southampton Town Board to order this 27th day of September 2018. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And let's remain standing as we join together in a brief moment of silence as we keep in our thoughts and prayers all the brave men and women in uniform of our armed services who defend our freedoms around the world. Let's also keep in our thoughts all of our first responders, our police departments, emergency service personnel, fire departments, etc., who also risk their lives in our protection. So let's join together with all of them in mind. Okay, please be seated. All right, Madam Clerk, would you read the special meeting notice followed by the roll call?
Certainly. Members of the Town Board, special Town Board meeting Thursday, September 27th, 2018 at 11 a.m. Please be advised that pursuant to Section 62 of Town Law, a special Town Board meeting will be held in the Town Board Meeting Room, Southampton Town Hall, 116 Hampton Road, Southampton, New York, on Thursday, September 27th, 2018 at 11 a.m. for the purpose of considering the following. Presentation of the Supervisor's 2019 tentative budget to the Town Board pursuant to Town Law 106.3. Jay Schneiderman, Supervisor, Town of Southampton, dated September 24th, 2018. Supervisor Schneiderman.
Present.
Councilwoman Lofstad.
Here.
Councilwoman Scalera. Councilman Bouvier.
Here.
Councilman Schiavone.
Here.
Okay, thank you. So let's get started. I'm going to present the budget from the podium. Madam Clerk, I'd ask you to distribute the budgets.
I'm going to deliver yours to you first.
Thank you. It's part of our fitness program.
Yes.
I think I'll rest it over here. Good morning, Town Board.
Replace that with Christine, so we'll make sure she gets it. Thank you.
Good, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Sunday. So certainly one of the most important functions of the town supervisor is to prepare and present the town budget. This is the temporary budget. It's the first draft, the first go at the budget for next year, for 2019. After today, it's in the board's hands to make changes as desired, to listen to the public, and to adjust as needed. So a lot of work went into this. That work was largely done by our controller, Len Marchese, and his staff, who I'll acknowledge in a little while. But let me take you through what's in this budget. And I'm proud, once again, to deliver the budget for the town. This is my third budget that I've been involved in the preparation of. And whenever we get into budgeting, we sort of are guided by some principles or some goals. The first goal, which I always keep in mind, and I've been in elected office now for about 20 years, is to try to hold the line on property taxes. All of our residents, those that own property, pay property taxes. Many are on fixed incomes, a lot of senior citizens in our community, and even those who are just struggling to get by. When property taxes go up, they have to pay those property taxes, or you lose your property, as you know. So it's not a discretionary spending item. You don't have to necessarily buy the new TV, but you do have to pay your property taxes. So there's really no escaping it. And I work really hard to try to put together a budget that does not raise property taxes, and you'll hear about that in a moment. Also meeting the town's growing needs. So as you think about, not wanting to collect additional funds from people, you also need to deliver services if your population is growing, or if you have critical problems that have to be solved. You obviously have to do those things. Town is involved in a lot of functions, from senior services to youth services to taking care of roads to making parks available for enjoyment of our residents. There's, the building department. There's so many different functions within a town. So we want to make sure that the town is properly funded so we can deliver the services that our residents expect. And in developing a budget, you are making assumptions. You're assuming a certain amount of revenue will come in. You're assuming what your expenses are going to be. We, the controller and I and the others involved, try to use very conservative assumptions. So we don't want to artificially over-project the revenues that we're going to see from, let's say, beach fees or building permits. We don't want to under-project the expenses, because then we end up creating a problem. If we know something's going to cost more than we've said it would, then as that year unfolds, you find yourself short. So we are extremely conservative in our projections, and that's why through the last few years we've actually ended up building up surpluses, because we end up, our expenses are under what we said, or our revenues are over what we said. So I'd rather err on the side of caution, and that's what we do every year, and including this budget. So some of the highlights, and the first one is there is a cut in property taxes. There is just over a 1% cut in the property tax rate. This is the third year, actually for me, the third year in a row at the town of Southampton. It's not the third year that I've reduced property tax rates, but here as Southampton Town Supervisor, it is the third year. It's a little bit bigger reduction than last year, perhaps a little smaller than the first year's reduction, but it's still moving in the right direction. To have the tax rate go down by 1% is relief for all of our property tax payers. This budget also reduces town's outstanding debt by $23 million. That's pretty significant, because the total outstanding debt is projected for next year, I think, around $58 million across all the different funds. A lot of the retiring debt is in the Community Preservation Fund, but it is a significant reduction overall in the town's obligations or outstanding bonded indebtedness. The next item up there is emphasis on infrastructure and facilities. Obviously we have to maintain our roads. We have things like the Ponquag Pavilion, which we know has gotten run down and needs to be repaired. We have here at Town Hall a heating and ventilation system that is not up to the technology that it needs to be, that needs to be improved. So across the town we have infrastructure problems that have to be addressed, and if you don't take care of it, it's like the leaky roof scenario. If you don't fix that roof, the costs later on are significantly higher. So we want to make sure that we are maintaining our infrastructure. The next item has to do with highway funding, and this is kind of interesting. There is more available money for highway, but it's not an increase so much in the highway budget, but a reallocation of funds. There was some, it turned out that some of our insurance costs, our working compensation costs were less after, we had gotten the audited numbers. We were able to credit back some money to the highway department. It leads to about $500,000 more available funding. We're able to do that, so that isn't being paid for with an increase in the highway budget, but more of that budget available for highway work, road work, and that's important. We also have $1 million in pay-as-you-go. That doesn't have to be in the budget. We put it there so that we could do capital items without having to bond. When you bond, and with our AAA credit rating, our interest rates tend to be low. You probably just saw that the Federal Reserve just did inch up the interest rates. That could affect us. But to be able to have money in the budget for capital items that don't require us to carry the interest on the borrowings is a positive thing. On the other side of that interest rate increase, the town does have money in the bank through, as we collect those property taxes and other funds. Sometimes there's $200 million in various bank accounts, including this community preservation fund. So getting a little more interest actually helps us in some respects as well. So the last two more items, this budget also includes the funding for green projects. I wish Councilman Scalera could be here today. One of those green projects has to do with the quiet parks, that going to battery operated equipment like battery operated leaf blowers, and also our LED conversion projects. We're buying fully electric vehicles, so the funds are there to meet our goals. We're on this. We've established a goal of trying to be 100% renewable by 2025. A goal we probably will have to adjust slightly. But we are moving in the right direction. It's good to have, I think, a strong goal like that. And the last item here, continuing to right-size and reorganize the town to make it as efficient and well-functioning as possible. And there are some changes here, such as street lighting, which currently is under Parks, that will be moving over to Municipal Works. And there's a few other adjustments to the town structure that we think the management team believes is positive. All right, so the tax rate, as I mentioned, is dropping by 1%. This is, I guess, the 4th year in a row that we've seen reductions. It's since that first year there, 2013, the overall tax rate went up one year and then fell, so it's about 3.2%. From its peak, I'd say it's about 3.6% lower than it was in 2014, 2015. So I think most people would agree that is a positive direction to be lowering the tax rate. That is the multiplier that is applied to your assessed valuation to determine actually how much taxes you'll be paying, your town portion. Of course, there's other taxes in your tax bill, your school taxes, et cetera. As I mentioned before, this budget is reducing debt. It's a significant reduction in debt. So if you look at this chart, you'll see through the years, our overall bonded indebtedness has gone down quite a bit. I can't see what that highest number was, but I think we're about, I'd say we're about half of what we were at.
136 million.
It was 136 and down to what, 58, Frank? Or
82.
Was it? 82, okay. I can't see those numbers. So that's a significant drop. What is it, Frank, 40%?
Correct.
40% drop from its height. So a significant reduction in outstanding debt. So one of the reasons we're able to do this is because the town continues to go up in value. In fact, we've had the largest jump in assessed valuation we have seen, more than 5% jump in the last year. So property values are going up. That's part of it, and that's a positive thing, I think, for most property owners. They like to see their property values go up. It's the second year in a row where property values across the town, every area of the town have improved, have increased. We also, about half of the new evaluation is coming from new construction. People who are adding pools, additions, taking an older house and building a newer house, so it hits the tax rolls at a higher number. So it's a significant jump. I think it's hard for me to see the chart, but we're about $67 billion in assessed valuation. I remember when I was presenting to Moody's for that AAA credit rating, and I had looked at their metrics that they use in assigning credit ratings to communities. And one of the things that they look at is per capita valuation. So if you take all of your value and divide it by your population, your census population, so we're 67 billion in real property and a population of under 60,000, you end up with a per person valuation of over $1 million. It's unheard of. So I don't know of anywhere else in the country where you have per person a value of real property in excess of $1 million. So we're obviously in very strong fiscal position, and we have gone up, 22% since, is that Frank, 2013?
Correct.
So it's a significant increase in real property value. Now, why is that happening? You could argue that the economy is strengthening, but I like to think that at least part of it is attributable to good decision making. Right? We just had a meeting with our police chief. We have a great new police chief. The department has been reorganized. We've seen major crimes fall by more than 20% in a year. It's a big reduction in crimes. The streets are safer. People like that. That helps support property values. We're improving our roads. We're fixing drainage problems. We're addressing infrastructure. We're improving our parks that everybody enjoys. What happens when you do that? People want to live in a community like that. It's where they want to invest their life savings. That's where they want to retire. That's where they want to stay. And so you see property values increasing, as I said, across the board. So Southampton is a great place to live. The decisions that we make as a board, I think, underscore that. And you're certainly seeing it in assessed valuation. So then, of course, you take that tax rate, you multiply it by the assessed valuation, and that brings in the money that you need to run the town. All right. Let me see if I can find this slide so I can help, because that's going to be hard to read for me. All right, so there's a number of infrastructure projects that the funding is included in this. We've discussed these all as a board. The Ponquag Beach Pavilion, which is now about a $3 million project. I think it's a very critical project that will help support our tourism economy and provide a place for all of our residents to enjoy the beach. It's going to be an absolutely beautiful new beach pavilion at Ponquag. Ludlam Park, a very important project for the community up in Riverside that will house the Children's Museum of the East End. There's funding in here for that. Hot Dog Beach, which this year became super popular. We reopened the beach and the parking lot, and there was a food truck there. We are now going to rebuild the walkway onto the beach and the switchback, create some more handicapped accessibilities. That's in here. Shinnecock Maritime Park, as you drive over the bridge, if you're heading toward Hampton Bays, going over the Shinnecock Canal, and you look down on your right, you'll see the Maritime Park. It's a beautiful facility. It's going to get even better as we work toward building a new pavilion, expanding the parking lot there, and eventually we'll see a restroom as well. Riverside Maritime Pedestrian Park, it's also something that the Riverside community, the Franca, and that whole community is very excited about, creating that trail to access the waterfront, and they've been involved in the design of that new trail and park area. Number 6 on the list, as I mentioned earlier, the town hall heating and ventilation system has to be replaced. It's a significant capital project. The funding is in this budget. Hampton Bays Community Center acquisition. Everybody's familiar with the senior center. We have met there many times. Civic groups use that. We also run our senior nutrition program there. It's a really important facility. We do not own it. We pay to be there every year. We are moving toward acquiring it. There's actually a cost savings, though it adds a little bit to our debt, because it'll look like our debt numbers are going up because we have to borrow to buy it, but our debt service is less than our rent. So we're going to come out ahead from this. But it's also, I think it's such a critical facility that it should be in town ownership. Good Ground Park Comfort Station, we have this amazing new park. All of us have been enjoying it with the amphitheater. It's been great. It's been a great venue. The community has come together. We've seen hundreds and hundreds of people come out to these events. We have these free concerts all summer, but there's no bathroom there. We've had a temporary bathroom. We're going to be building a comfort station at Good Ground Park, and that is funded here. Tiana Life Saving Station, if you've driven down Dune Road, you have seen the old life saving station. It's a historic building. It's not historic because it was formerly Neptune's. That's a lot of people probably remember it as Neptune's, but long before it was Neptune's, it was a Coast Guard station. It was staffed predominantly by African Americans, and it is being lovingly restored, and we're looking forward to completing that project. The Lobster Inn Marina, there's some planning money involved in reopening that marina. We own that property now, but there's some dock work, bulkhead work that needs to be done, so we're trying to assess that. So the money is in for that too, so we can open up another town marina like we have in several other locations, including Conscience Point. The LED replacement project is funded in this. It's also, it does add to borrowing in a sense, though we've done it's a slightly different model on the borrowing for that, so you're not seeing it in our capital debt. But we are saving, again, more in our utility bills, the reduction in our electric costs than carrying the borrowed money for that LED street lighting project. So, and after 7 years, it becomes significantly cost effective. It's also the right thing to do, right? So we're getting better light, it's good for public safety, but we're reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and dependence on foreign sources of oil. And lastly, I have placed money into this budget for Jackson Avenue to study the facilities there. We know ultimately we're going to need a new justice court. The building is past its life expectancy. They are operating out of it, but we need to start planning for the future and figuring out what the town is going to do. And several of our buildings there are in disrepair. So there's money here to start planning for the future of the Jackson Avenue town facilities there. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. The next slide has to do with meeting growing demands. So, I try to be careful when we talk about town staffing, as to, it's obviously expensive when you add additional people. You have not only salaries involved, but you have benefits. I look very carefully before I say we need another person. We study this, we look at other ways to handle it, through technology, through consolidations, through any ways we can basically avoid adding additional staff. I believe, though, that these 4 positions are necessary to meet, because of our growing needs, our growing population. The first one is an additional full-time police officer to work in our police department. It will allow us to have the proper sector coverage that we need. The second item here is a town engineering position, and I see this almost like a clerk of the works. We have so many capital projects, and it is taking a lot of time from our municipal works director as well as our parks director to have someone who can assist them with the management of capital projects as an assistant town engineer will help greatly. The third one is a senior administrative assistant in the Parks Department. We are growing our parks, sometimes through CPF acquisitions. Kristen Doulos, who is here, our Parks Director, could use some more administrative support. She's doing a tremendous job managing the Parks Department. She actually deserves, I think, a round of applause. we have a Parks Department that is second to none. It's extraordinary in terms of the assets that we maintain for the public. We're growing those assets. I mentioned before the Old Lobster Inn, which is now going to be a town marina. So we're trying to give Kristen the support that she needs. And the last one is in the assessor's office. It's one office assistant. It's actually, this is a part-time position becoming a full-time position. So you can think of it as actually adding half a position because the person is already there. It's just basically taking somebody who's part-time and making them full-time. And that's a very busy office, as you know. So moving on to the next slide. So the proposed budget also supports several things. Some of these I've already mentioned, the increase in pay-as-you-go. There's, of course, we have contractual arrangements with our various bargaining units, including CSEA and PBA. So, I have to meet those. I have to budget for whatever % increase in salaries or other benefits. That is all within this budget. Christine's been working on the quiet zones. I know that's a project that's very important to her. We've been expanding that. We have one at Town Hall. We have one in East Quogue at the Hamlet Green. So we'd like to continue to expand our use of quiet landscaping equipment, keeping our bays and harbors healthy, our water quality. John, that's something that's deeply important to you, trying to reduce nitrogen. So we do have funding for 2 additional pump-out boats. Those are largely the funding, though, we put out, a lot of it's reimbursable. I think it's about 70% reimbursable. So we, from it's either state or federal programs that we will, so the pump-out boats, we're only paying about 20 or 30% of the cost of those. There's funding for diversity training for our staff. There's funding for public safety improvements. And we are fully funding our pension costs. Other levels of government have been amortizing pension costs because they have not been able to pay for increasing pension costs, pushing that cost off for future years. I think it's a dangerous practice. We are lucky to be, we're fortunate to be in the position we don't have to borrow for our pension costs. Our pension costs are fully funded in this budget. Okay, and in conclusion now, so it's a fiscally sound and responsive budget. It, we will now move to, it becomes the town board's budget to listen to the public. We'll have some public portion today, so we're looking forward to that. Then there'll be 2 hearings as well. There were many who assisted. Let me start by thanking all the department heads, some of them who are here, who sat with myself or the controller, primarily with the controller. Paula from IT is here, I see. Russell Crowderville is here. So we have Marty Shea from Environment. So I want to thank everybody who participated, in particular, though, our controller, Len Marchese, Dorada, who is also here, Lisa from his office, Mark from his office, everybody who helped put this budget together. I think it's a really good, fiscally sound budget. I look forward to hearing the public comments as well as the town board comments and moving toward having an adopted budget for next year. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Also, thank you, Frank, for your help with the budget as well as the slideshow today. Okay, so we're going to go to public portion. I don't have any cards. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard? Judy?
You want me to go up there?
Yes. So there's each speaker will have 3 minutes to make their comments known. If you're approaching the last 30 seconds, the clerk will let you know that you have 30 seconds to go.
I just first want to say that I'm gonna hand out a more intense statement.
All right. Judy, you're going to have to identify yourself for our records.
Wait, could I just have a stapler for a second?
I don't have
Somebody have a stapler? This little staple was being annoying, sorry.
So before Judy speaks, so the tentative budget also includes the special districts, including the ambulance districts, We are commissioners of 4 districts, so we get funding requests from those departments. We then, we have to prepare a tax rate for those departments that will lead to the collection of funds that will allow them to manage those public safety entities. And I know that Judy's going to be speaking about the Southampton ambulance. So
Right, but I just wanted to say, I'm going to hand out more extensive comments. I'm going to recap my extensive comments by a under 3-minute bullet point.
Okay.
Okay. My bullet points. An ambulance building does not have anything to do with response times and quality of care. 2, the membership of SVA has been about the same since 2000, which can easily be fact-checked. 3, SVA has responded to calls in the community since its inception, even though the number of calls has increased, and this is wholly unrelated to the building. 4, top-of-the-line creature comforts are not necessities for first responders. 5, major weather events or other events that require prolonged responses are rare. 6, the ambulance building is not supposed to be a second home, a crash pad, or a hangout for volunteers. 7, the ambulance company does not own the building because SVA is a subset of the town government, as well as it being set forth in the contract between SVA and the town, which I mentioned because it was incorrectly stated in a 27 East article. 8, in 2014, SVA downsized to 2 ambulances, even though there are 3 bays. Requesting 4 bays is totally unnecessary. Obviously, the increased volume of calls over the years does not require more than 2 ambulances. 9, meetings and drills do not have to be scheduled at the same time, and even if they are, there are 2 other rooms in the building. Further, 1 of the 3 ambulance bays is empty because there are only 2 ambulances. 10, not conducting CPR or first aid classes is a choice by SVA, not a limitation because of the building, because they have been conducted in the past. 11, there is adequate parking for meetings in the parking lot, which is to code, and for any overflow on the residential street, and most of the time the parking lot is empty, except for a couple of cars. 12, if the supplies were not cluttered and disorganized, a lot of space would be freed up. 13, open houses should be conducted for the community to view the building before a budget would be approved for a new building. In conclusion of my bullet points, town board members should do their due diligence as commissioners. Just because SVA may not have members who can manage efficiently for scheduling meetings, drills, CPR, and first aid classes, or to efficiently organize supplies, is not an excuse to reward members with a new building to be a hangout space. What they want is a shiny new building. A building does not increase response times. A building does not provide the quality of care. The town should be directing their oversight of SVA from the perspective of the care of the community, not just throwing money for a building and rewarding mismanagement.
Could you please identify yourself?
My name is Judy Posnick. It's signed here with my name and address. And I have a copy of each one of these for the supervisor
All right, thank you.
and the members, and to be part of the minutes, which will be followed up.
I'm sorry, part of the minutes?
Oh, I forgot to sign it. Sorry. I want my full,
So,
my full written
so what?
statement to be part of the minutes.
That's not how.
Len, why don't you
I've
stay?
done,
Wait,
it's happened.
it will be, just, ma'am, you can,
I need to sign it. I forgot to
That's-
sign it. I'm going to sign it because then I know it's me.
Yeah, at least till the end of public portion, Len.
And
So-
then, but, okay, if you don't want to make it part of the public portion,
No, it is part of,
I mean,
so,
if you don't want to make it part of the minutes,
no, it is part of the minutes. So let me just
This
explain
document.
what
because
Ms.
I've done this
Posnick-
before and it's been part of the minutes.
Are you done, so I can speak?
Yeah.
Okay.
not while I've been here.
What Ms. Posnick is referring to is within the budget, in the Southampton ambulance section, I have provided a level of funding that will carry a construction loan or note that will allow them to build a new ambulance barn. That's something that they had requested. It's a decision you guys will have to review. It does increase the tax rate within that district. Overall,
Lynn?
as you know, New York State has a cap. It's a pierceable cap. So we are not proposing to pierce the cap. So although that district went up, I'm sorry, Judy, you can say.
Oh,
I'm just talking to the
do I
board.
get to respond to what you say?
No. If you could say it, I'm just addressing, talking to the board. So, okay, so Governor Cuomo in New York State established a tax cap. People think of it as a 2% increase. It's not, this year it's actually pretty close to a 2% actual increase, but there are other factors that determine the actual amount of growth in the tax levy. So when one district goes up, you have to be careful because you may have to pierce the cap to do that. But if other districts go down, and you can stay within the cap. So this budget, including the fact that the Southampton Ambulance District does go up, is still, we still manage to prepare a budget that does not pierce the cap. So we don't have to vote to pierce the cap. I thought initially we might, but we do not.
Excuse me, I never talked about.
I'm talking to the board about, Judy, this is not about what you're saying. I'm talking about the cap because I failed to mention during my presentation that we stayed within the cap. I had wanted to mention that. I had some concerns with the request from Southampton Ambulance for the funding for the ambulance barn, that it might lead to piercing the cap, but we were able to stay within the cap. I wanted the board to be aware of that. Okay? Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard? All right, anyone else? Okay, so hearing none, I'll make a motion to close public portion.
Second.
Okay, a second by Councilman Bouvier, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, approved. All right, so public portion is closed. So can we just go over now what days the hearings are on the budget? So I can, do you have that?
I can give you the regular, I can just tell you
Yeah.
It'd be a special meeting next Thursday to consider any changes to the tentative, convert it to the preliminary.
And that's going to be 10 o'clock?
Yes,
All right, so 10 o'clock next Thursday.
the tentative gets converted to the preliminary, and then we schedule public hearings. 2 public hearings are scheduled. October 23rd at 6 p.m.
October 23rd at 6 p.m. will be
The town board meeting.
a public hearing on the preliminary budget.
Right.
So this, again, this is the tentative budget, then next comes the preliminary budget.
And then November 13th, which is the next regular town board meeting, Tuesday, November 13th, at 1 p.m.
All right, Tuesday, November 13th, 1 p.m. will be the second hearing on the preliminary budget.
Correct. And then it will close then at that point.
Okay.
With budget adoption on November 20th.
Okay, and November 20th is the date for budget adoption.
And just a question, just because we get stymied by this a little during past budgets, so I want to get it right. When would you like to have discussions if, in fact, we, as the board, have amendments that we would like to have on the floor or talk to you about or talk to the rest of the board about? When would you like to do those? Because I know in the past you've not wanted to do it during the public portion, but I don't know. You don't have to give me an answer right now, just to think about
We could
it.
do that in a work session.
Okay.
I would prefer that. We could schedule a work session and discuss that, so that we could focus on listening to the public
Okay.
at the public meetings. Okay?
Yep.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, so that is all we have for this special meeting. We have a few more executive agenda items left from our earlier work session, so I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this, and we'll reconvene in the conference room to finish our executive session. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Scalera, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.